wow.
What, we haven't picked a topic. Is there anything that's calling to you before we jump in?
You know, the post that you made the other day about being a goddess,
Fuck
if you
yeah,
wanted
let's do
to,
it.
because
Fuck
that's been
yeah.
a big theme for
I'm
me, is
in.
like really, especially like my feminine energy. And this may be a topic that resonates because I think a lot of us overachieving women have kind of had our masculine energy really dominate, and maybe we push down or block some of our feminine energy.
Are you
Well,
on
you
it?
made this great post about being a goddess, about like, I forget what it was, but something about
I'll pull it up.
embracing your goddessness, or that you are a goddess.
Yeah, it was a Bob Dylan quote,
Mm-hmm.
but it was basically, the quote goes, "Sweet goddess, born of a blinding light and a changing wind. Now don't be modest. You know who you are and where you've been." I just love that, because the line that struck me the most, I certainly love that it says, sweet goddess, like it's a very loving entry into the quote, but this idea of like born of a blinding light, that is the piece that I feel like people forget. And I say people, and I mean myself. Like really, when I get disconnected from my spiritual self and the fact that I am born of a blinding light, and I mean, I really, when I connect to that, I'm like, yes, that's accurate. And it's not just me. Like, that's why I tagged like a zillion people. I fucking was like, this is everybody I can think of in my entire life, men and women. But I was like, you were sort of mentioning going in the direction of feminine energy, and it definitely has a feminine tone to it. And that's a different conversation. I was thinking of it in terms of everyone, but I also see it in the feminine as well. So anyway, go on. I love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that it's funny because I'm doing a lot of work around this right now. Like really, really, like, it's like, am I ever going to stop getting deep into my shit? Like, is there ever going to be an end where I'm like, oh, more shit in there? But it's like, I'm deep in it, right? Deep into the deepest of the deep blocks that I keep, coming up against the threshold. And one of my teachers said to me last week, he's like, Pam, you got to do the work when you don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
And you know me well enough to know, fuck, I'm like, bring it on, motherfucker. When do I not want to do the work, right?
I want to do the work, yeah. Right. And for sure.
Said that, I was like, but I always want to do the work. And he's like, yes. When do you not want to do the work? When do you jump to something outside of yourself instead of breathing, pausing, and saying, why is this so uncomfortable? And instead of taking action right now, sit in stillness with it and be with it and say, what is that in there? And at first I was like, there's nothing there, man. Like, I swear I'm good.
I'm good. I'm clear. I'm spiritual. I'm connected. I got this. I'm born of blinding light.
Pam, wait. I was like, I sat, I waited, and I was like, Dad, when I was little. And because you know me well enough to know I was trouble as a child and adolescent. Like I was not a good girl. I was not a good girl. And so one of the things that this teacher said, he's there, I can see you writing a book, like a good girl's guide to being bad.
Yep.
Because like me embracing, like, again, we've talked about this, but like the deeper stuff around where am I bad? Like, where do I put that judgment on myself? And when I was little, I really just wanted to be good, but I was naturally a disruptor. I was naturally a troublemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And my masculine energy, my problem solving, my overachieving nature solved a lot of that. Like I was able to, and I'm nurturing too, but then out in the world, it was like, all right, I'm going to start businesses and, be an overachiever.
I always forget that that's part of your story, that full on banking. It's funny that we share that piece.
Public, and I can talk the talk, with really high level investors, and I can be in that that crowd, and actually was talking to someone that's helping me in my fitness business. And I was kind of just letting him know my vision for it. And he's like, well, obviously you don't need any help, pitching to investors. And I was like, well, thank you. Because I haven't done that in a long time. Like,
Yeah.
and I can do all that. And I can be nurturing. It's just, there is an authenticity that I've been blocking around my feminine energy,
Yeah.
right? There's just a lot of trouble that comes with that, not to get too into all that stuff. But anyway, so that quote, when you posted it, I was like, fuck yeah. Like, one, I'm a goddess. Like, I am like leaning into that. Like, I am a motherfucking goddess
Yeah.
who's bad. Half the time I'm going to be bad. I'm going to cause trouble. I'm going to be uncomfortable for a lot of
Yeah.
people. And then it's funny because the Born of the Blinding Light thing, I feel very connected to that most of the time. The don't be modest line really resonated with me. It's like, because I'm definitely, and I want to be humble, but there's a difference between humility and modesty. There's just a subtle difference in those words. And again, it's just a word. And what does it mean? Humbleness is saying, like, there's no one better than me. There's no one worse than me. Modesty is saying, I'm not fucking awesome. And
Yeah, I do believe there is a subtle distinction of owning, like modesty is almost a play.
Yeah.
Like it's almost rooted in inauthenticity.
Or blindly kind of dimming your light, not realizing
Correct.
you're doing it because you don't want to be disruptive. You don't want
Correct.
to, rock the boat.
Correct. I agree.
So that was helpful to me because I definitely still have a lot of fear, a lot of sensitivity, a lot of trauma that's keeping me from really, really allowing the fullness of my light to shine.
It's one of the interesting resources I've come up or I've discovered through my own work and growth and everything. And just, I don't know if you've heard of David Data.
No.
Well, he's big in the teachings of the masculine and feminine energy roles, stuff like that. Like, it's really confronting stuff when you start to look at masculine, feminine, and the interplay of those things. So I would, to people reading and for myself to go back to, for you now, whatever, like, it's just really, again, not to say that any one resource is like the key, just that inside of, when I first was listening to his stuff, I definitely, it's intense shit in a good way. Like, it forces you to consider things in a really strong way. Like, it's hard to describe, like, without I'm not going to be able to be David Data here. So I really do encourage people to seek it out if they are interested in exploring this idea and learning more and distinguishing more between that masculine, feminine energy in themselves and how they behave and how it shows up in their relationships, how it shows up just in how they feel and what they maybe want to be doing more of or less of or whatever. Maybe they can find pieces where they're out of more deep alignment. That's something I would recommend for sure.
Yeah, because we all have both. And what happens is because we get judgmental or we end up having kind of coping mechanisms to kind of protect ourselves.
Yeah.
That we get out of alignment with our authentic, rejecting maybe some part of us or overcompensating with some other part of us, which is totally normal, totally natural. And we have this opportunity to get more into our power and more integrated in all of ourselves.
Definitely. It's cool. I love those kinds of things that really challenge us forward to own our light. Like, this has been a consistent challenge for me in life and in leadership, as like just acknowledging myself as a leader. Like, there's that consistent battle with what is humility versus modesty, right? Like, and what is me keeping my gifts from the world, right? That like it's like almost like you have to just courageously try to be whatever that is, you know, like I do this because it's like, who the fuck knows what that is, how that looks, you know, so you kind of just have to try it yourself. Like my way of being a bold, blinding light to the world might look differently than, and likely looks differently than the way you do it, you know, and the way this person does it or that person does it. And yeah, I find that when I am feeling free to embrace that concept, I am my most powerful in a positive sense, not in a like, not in the sort of negative connotation.
Not in a forceful way, right? And I feel
like that's when I influence the most in a positive way. That's when I connect most deeply, which is the foundation of influence. It's like when I feel most purposeful and positive and good about myself and life. And, you know, it's even like almost disconnected from those feelings and judgments also. You know, it's like this very pure experience. So it's like a part of my practice is continually sort of intentionally trying and working on cultivating a connection with that concept and how it then shows up in my literal actions and words.
Yeah, it's another way of kind of saying being in the flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're in the flow with your gifts, with your talent, with your love.
Yeah.
The other thing that reminded me of was that one of the things that I talked about in this session with my teacher last week was around shadows, you know, the parts of ourselves that we're kind of rejecting or having the aversion to. And the first thing that came up was that I have a shadow around entitlement. And I was like, oh yeah, I hate fucking entitlement. I hate people that are entitled. I hate that. And he's like, yeah, and there's part of you that is entitled. Like you are worthy of, you are entitled to, you know, your birthright of this life. And I was like, ooh,
I love that.
yes. And I was like, okay, so I need to integrate that entitlement, not in a negative way, but integrate that I have the right to be here. I am here in this body, in this time and place.
Yeah.
And I am entitled to this life and then empowered to shine it forth and then entitled to receive it back, because it's about that flow, that currency of it all. And that is flow. You can't have flow only in one direction. It's a cycle. It's a, you know, it's a cyclical kind of out and back in. We exhale out, we breathe back in. And that was really helpful to me as well, because I definitely have an aversion around, you know, feeling entitled or being entitled or acting entitled. And there is a healthy, you know, right that we all have to our life, to being here, to our authenticity, and showing up with that, which is hard.
It's so fascinating. The juxtaposition, like the masculine and feminine stuff, like I feel like that's so interesting when it shows up multiple, obviously like all over, but two things I'm thinking of. One is like in business, for example, of being sort of that powerful person who can make it happen, who has clear vision, who executes, who takes action, who not necessarily even when there's like detachment from outcome, and even when you're sort of in a like chill state, that still can feel very masculine. You know what I mean? That like building of business and stuff like that, it can have this sort of masculine undertone just because it's like it's just like this building. And again, not that needs to be masculine per se, just that it's, I think, classically defined as such, and therefore it maybe feels that way. Maybe that's just my experience with it. But like where I find myself more confronted by my desire to expand my feminine energy is in my dancing. So like, because I have hours and hours all day long building my business, doing my thing. Like I'm in my masculine energy a lot as well. And so it's like without intentionality to like open it up and move in a certain way and connect to it. And I'm not very good at that, you know, quote unquote, not very good at that. that's why I'm like, oh, I want to grow into this area. I want to, like, this is something I also explored with my like fashion, is connecting. I used to be very disconnected from my external presentation. And there was a whole phase where I went into like, I want to feel sexy. I want to feel like this external projection is me. And then, of course, there's lots of learning in that process as well. It's like, where does that feeling of femininity and sexiness come from? Like, I don't necessarily feel that way in like a low cut top, for example. Like, I feel more sexy, for example, in like even something like this, you know what I mean? Like, so it just depends, but it's like, it's energetic and it's a process, I feel like, but it's like, how do we get out of that and how do we explore that? I think it's an interesting process and conversation, but I would love you to jump in and share your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing fair is, for me, there's like a lot of trauma around my feminine energy. I mean, I don't know if I ever told you the story when I was wearing a suit. And again, the fact that I even have to preface this story with that I was wearing a suit, because I was wearing a suit and I was walking across town in Midtown, New York. It was a hot day, so I'd taken my jacket off and I was wearing like a tank top and a skirt and heels and walking. And I got shot in the ass with a pellet gun. I have a butt. For those of you who haven't seen, I have a butt.
Oh my God.
I have a butt. And so I got shot like and it hurt so badly. And I immediately turned and there was no way to tell who had done it.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like literally the first week that I had moved to New York City. And it was so traumatizing.
Of course.
I mean, one, it was incredibly painful. And I had a welt, like, 1.5 inches, 2 inches.
Oh my gosh.
Welt on my ass. I was like, this is fucking great. And I literally went back to my office and I went into the supply closet and just cried. So I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't feel safe.
Totally understandable.
I think a lot of men don't realize, and that obviously is kind of more of an extreme example, but the number of times that someone, you're at a crowded place, like at a carnival, and someone like reaches up your shorts and grabs your ass, like things like that, that I don't think men realize necessarily how frequently happen to women, which then, of course, naturally makes a young woman traumatized and want to shut that off, and like not want to be sexy and not want that unwanted attention, even just the cat calls and the unwanted energy. You can feel it when someone's looking at you like that. And when you're young, especially, and it's like new and you like you don't even know what to do with that.
Absolutely.
And just to hold space for that, because that's real shit. In the same way that men get traumatized around their feminine energy, because men have feminine energy, and heaven forbid, many generations and many cultures, our society, if a man acts femininely, there was so much disparaging kind of stuff that could happen around that. And I remember being young and being more masculine and having people say disparaging things about that. And it's like, so, just holding space for the reality of our childhoods and our adolescence and our young adultness and whatever traumas may have happened that were painful, that we then associated with the different energy and the different kind of the right that we had to show up as ourselves. Like, is it safe to really show up as ourselves? Can we face the trauma, the pain, the attacks? And when we're young, we don't yet have the strength or the skills to do that. And now as adults, for us to just hold space, like, that was really scary. Yeah, that was really painful. And I'm an adult now, and it's safe for me to show up in my fullness. And if I get attacked, if people, whatever, like, I'm not a child, I can handle that. And I'm going to hold my own and maintain the integrity of my space. And it's hard because there's some deep trauma in there for most of us around this stuff.
It's such a worthwhile area of life to look at. Like, for people watching, whether you're versed deeply in masculine, feminine stuff, or whether you're like, what the fuck, what are they even talking about? Or like this is even a conversation, whatever, like, level at which you are in your exploration of this, I would only bring it to our audience as it is an area that I personally would advise you to explore, for sure, so as to unlock all said blinding light that you are born from. Truly.
Whether you're a god or a goddess, whatever,
Yes.
whatever form you're taking in this lifetime,
Yes.
you are that.
Yes.
Get in touch with that. Just keep asking yourself, who am I? Who am I really?
Yeah.
Oh, really quick, funny story.
Yeah.
We had dinner Saturday night at Red Lobster of all places, and the kids are really tired. We're at Red Lobster, and I got king crab, and Jesse wanted to get the little, the little forks that you use to get the crab out of the shell. And so he didn't want any crab until the little fork came. So finally the little fork came, and he got the little fork, and he started to reach out with the little fork, and instantly his whole face, he was shocked about something. And I was like, what was that, Jess? Like, you okay? What was that? And he goes, I just had a really big realization. I was like, okay, what was it? And he's like, I just realized that this little fork is like my arm, is like my body, and it's not me. And it's like, he had this whole spiritual existential realization around, he connected with knowing himself not as his body.
Oh my God.
He realized that his was like the little fork was a tool that he had access to. And it was the cutest because his authenticity was he was freaked out.
I love
he was
it.
in the Matrix. He realized he woke up to part of the Matrix.
I love it.
And I was henceforth, this shall be known as the Red Lobster Little Fork Realization Epiphany.
I love that. I freaking love that. Whether he forgets it and then comes back to it later, whether he remembers it vividly forever. I think that's so awesome. It brings me to a similar thing. I posted a different quote about our spark and whatever it is to use our curiosity to follow our use our courage rather to follow our curiosity. So to follow those sparks, to have courage enough to look over there and go that direction, however small, however big, however whatever it is. And one of my friends posted on that thread and asked, is it possible to lose your spark? And I shared to that end that I genuinely don't think it's possible at all. 100% not possible.
Temporarily?
What?
Temporarily?
Well, no, this is the thing, is what I do think that the spark can get covered up and muffled by ideas, by situational elements, by relational elements, by lack of spiritual connection. It can be dampened such that it seems like it's no longer there. Mm-hmm. It's there somewhere. Mm-hmm. We just then have to go, Matilda scratched my finger.
Oh, honey.
I know. It's totally this is a metaphor too, is that I'm so willing to love her and brush her. She got scared while I was brushing her, and she was freaked out and scratched my finger.
Got you big time.
Really, it hurt a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm hey,
it's the price on that, will you?
I did. It's the price you pay for love.
Love does hurt sometimes.
Yeah. But anyway, so that thought, and Sarah's coming home now, so we can say hi. Oh, hi, what's up?
Well, it's funny because again, it's words, right? Words of how you define losing.
Yeah. And so anyway, just to that end is that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you lose the North Star?
Yeah, I don't think
in your mind you can.
In your mind?
In your mind you can lose it.
Yes.
And the reality is we're human beings. So what we believe is really powerful. So if you believe you lost it in those moments, and we have the power to remember that we never actually lose it. It's always there, even if we can't see it. So even on a super cloudy night, the stars are still there.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. That's the thing. If we are born of that blinding light, it's always there, but I do think sometimes life and situations and our choices and our ideas cover it up. And so that's all it is. It points us back to that work, those skills of mindset, those skills of situational choices and all of that stuff. So I love it. Good one, my love. I love you.
Goddess.
Boom.
Melanie Curtis.
Pamela Gold.
It's gotta